Hi everyone, welcome again to Skill Inspirational Academy. I hope you all are doing good. So today we are into 2021. So happy new year to everyone. So yesterday video we discussed about DNS. Okay. So like what is DNS? So we have discussed like introduction, like how DNS works. Okay. So today we will discuss more on DNS part, like what are records, different records in DNS. Once we are done with this, then we will go further on GTM stuffs. So before going, I'm more focusing on DNS part is because it needs to be important. You need to understand DNS, how it works. So as a revision, I think we have already discussed like DNS uses two port. This is very important. Also, this is an important interview question like why DNS use UDP and why DNS use TCP. So TCP is used for zone transfer, which will come in the picture in concept of DNS Express. Okay. Another term UDP is a normal port which will listen for queries and responses. So in F5 term, this is called listener. So we will come into further on details on that. So let me go further. We've already talked about this recursive and non-recursive query. We have talked about DNS namespace like it's in hierarchy structure, a tree structure that starts with root. So each node represent a domain name. So there are two branches of DNS. One is forward lookup and one is reverse lookup. So forward lookup will do hostname to IP address. Reverse lookup will do IP address to hostname. So this is also very important concept. We have already talked about top level domains TLD, like either it can be .com, edu, .net, organization, everything. So I will not go detail on that. You don't need to understand this. You just need to know how DNS traffic flows, which I showed in previous video. So domain name. So domain name is either it can be www.cs.ucr or it can be case insensitive. This is your domain name, FQDN, fully qualified domain name. So if I talk about eon.cs.ucr.edu, so eon is your host name and cs.ucr.edu is your domain name. That's it. So sometimes people have question like how to register your domain name. So you need to first like people have questions like, hey, I need to register my website. So what are the things to understand when you register your website? So you need to purchase a website or register a domain with your owner. Either it's GoDaddy.com and there are many other. GoDaddy.com is famous where you can buy or purchase your domain. So you need to first pick a domain name of your interest. Then they will dedicate two name servers. So RFC 112.19 state that each domain should be served by at least two servers, that is master and slave. If master goes down, then slave would be active. So whenever you pick a domain name, they will dedicate two name servers to it. One is master and one is slave. So this is very important term to understand. They will dedicate one technical contact person, one admin contact person who manage this, who is the admin of your domain. Then you register the name to the registrar of your choice. So it can be, previously it was done via email or fax, now it's all web based. So this is how you register a domain name. So you go to godaddy.com and you can do it. So I think we have discussed this how DNS works. Like first it got to root server, then it goes to top level domain, then second level domain. Now another term which comes into picture in mind with everyone is like how it is DNS caching. This is also important term. So DNS caching as term states that DNS server cache results they receive from other servers. So all caching is based on the TTL value, time to live. So that's why we say that whenever your computer, like let's say that we have a PC, we have LDNS, then we have root, top level domain, then second level domain, SLD. So LDNS stores something on cache. So let's say that initially we says that initially when computer request for any domain, it will check its local cache. So each result is served based on your TTL value. So DNS server caching is very important when you want fast results. So it serves request from caching rather than it goes recursively and iteratively. So it will have fast response. It will resolve your name to IP on fast based resolution. That's why DNS caching is important. Otherwise, your DNS flow will be like this. Your client will check its local caching. If it does not have, then it will check for etc host, which I told in previous video everything on this. Okay. Then it will go to root, top level domain, second level domain, then it goes like that. But if it serves from local cache or it serves from LDNS cache, then your result, your resolution will be fast. That is advantage of DNS caching. Another term which comes in picture for your DNS would be authoritative versus non-authoritative. What is authoritative answer and what is non-authoritative answer? So authoritative answer is from your name server, such as reading the data from the disk, and it is guaranteed to be accurate. Non-authoritative answer would be from answer from the cache may not be accurate. So whenever you have a domain, whenever you purchase a domain, one name server would be there who will be authoritative. Okay, it will be authoritative and it will resolve your name. It will manage your all domain data. So we have one primary and one slave. So primary and secondary servers are authoritative for their own domain. Domain can be like google.com, facebook.com, anything. So you need to check that google.com, fb.com. So authoritative name server is just reading data from your disk and it's guaranteed to be accurate. So I will go further on the records part where I will tell you, you will get to know like you will understand more on who is authoritative and what is non-authoritative when we perform some labs. Okay, let's move further. Another term which is called recursive versus non-recursive. So recursive queries are the queries on a client behalf until it returns either an answer or an error. So whenever your workstation goes to LDNS or further it goes to further top level domain, your second level domain. So recursive query would be query on a client behalf until it returns an answer. So until it will not an answer, it will not give you. So recursive query will be query on behalf of client until it returns either an answer or error. Non-recursive is basically called as a iterative query. So whenever you go for any interview, they will ask you two questions. One is recursive query. What is difference between recursive and what is difference between iterative? Recursive versus your iterative query. So you need to know difference between this. This is important. So iterative query would be refers to the client to another server. If it can't find your answer to the query, means it will give you the reference. Like if you say that you are a manager, okay, of an IT company, and you dedicated some duties to someone like managing account, managing password. Some duties you have taken to upgrade your devices. So you will say that initially client will come to the manager, hey, I need to reset my password. So what your manager will do is it will refer to the person Vijay has go to Vijay. It has your answer. So it will refer the client to another server until it can't find answer to the query. So that is called iterative versus recursive. So basically, I will show you further. There is a DNS database which is built, which is called zone file. This is important term, zone files. So zone files are also important to understand. Basically, it's a set of text file called zone files maintained by system admin on your master name server. So we have in zone files, we will have your resource records. Okay, we will have further. So zone files, there are, I will show you like how zone files look like. So it is like in DNS also there is a zone file. Also we have zone files in our GTM boxes also. So we have zone files, which is just a text file maintained by your system admin on your master name server. So two types of entries are there. One is parser commands like who is the origin, who is the main authoritative and TTL value. And then we have a resource records for that entry. So this is what is called zone file. Okay. So once you have zone file, we will make it like how zone files are there. We will create all records in zone file. Now let's go further. So now let's go to your DNS database resource record type. This is very important term to understand what are the different records in your DNS. Same will work for your either it's a normal DNS or it's F5 GTM. Same you need to know like for both you need to have understanding for both. So first type is called your start of authority. Then there is a name server. Then is your A record, IPv6 record, PTR record, MX record, CNAME, and your text record. So I will go further on this. Let's go further on what are the different types of record types. So record types, I have a good slide on that with your description. So let me go into that part. So basically, we talked about zone file. Okay, we talked about zone file. So whenever you configure, you purchase a domain, Your admin would have zone file where it will keep traffic data. Traffic means where it will keep track of your records, resource records. So what are resource records? So there are different types. One of the famous resource records are a record. So a record will map your host name to the IP address. So first record is your a record, which will map your host name to IP address. Okay. Another important record is called your name server record, which is also important. So this name server will come in picture many time. So name server record tells you like it will map your domain name to the list of authoritative DNS server. It will tell you like for particular domain like xyz.com who is authoritative. So it will give list of authoritative name server or list of authoritative DNS server. Then another record comes into picture is your CNAME record. So CNAME record will map your domain name to alias of another. So it's like shortened. Like s- I have my name is Vijay. So in my home I called VI. So CNAME record is just an alias, makes one domain name an alias of another. So we will come further on like what is CNAME when we go further, but you need to understand this records type. This is very, very important. Another record which comes in mind is MX record. Generally, we don't use this record. It is basically comes in the picture which will give you list of mail exchange servers. So it will map a domain name to the list of mail exchange servers whenever you are sending any email. PTR record. So PTR record is it will map an IP address to the canonical name for that host. So that is called PTR record. And another record whenever you make zone files, resource record type. So another record which comes to picture is your SOA record, which specifies the authoritative DNS server like email of domain, serial number, and everything. So let me go, this is theory part. So let me show you like how zone files look like. Just I will show you. I will go to the DNS server. Okay. And I will show you like Linux server. And I will show you how zone files look like. So before making this is my Linux DNS server, so I have made it as a bind server. So when I go to ct etc/bind, you need to first install bind. I will show you like how to install bind on Linux server. So when I go to ls-l, so you will have your bind file, which is called as db dot something like db dot 127 db dot domain.com. So let's go to nano db dot domain.com. So when you go there, so in this case, can you see this? This is how zone files look like. So we have start of authority, which I was talking about, which will give you like email ID, what is the root name server. Then we have different records like name server record, a record, cname record. So this is how your zone file look like. where different resource records are created. Also, we have one important con- configuration in bind, which is called named configuration. So when I go to nano named dot conf dot local, we have created resource record here, and here we will create zone name. So like here I created zone like xyz.com. It depends what is the domain, like google.com, facebook.com, and I will tell you type as master. Like then can you see this? The zone file which is called is the same resource record file. So here we create zone name only, and we will refer the file name here. And in other file we used resource record. Okay, so we discussed two files, zone file and named file, named configuration file. Okay, so in named configuration file we will just mention zone name and type like master, and we will refer the file of zone file name. Okay, in zone file we will create resource records. That is how DNS will resolve entries according to the zone file database. A record, 4A's records, PTR record, NS record, CNAME record, all are created in our zone file. So we can configure our legacy Linux DNS as bind, or we can configure GTM as bind also. We will come further when we go further on that details. Okay, I hope it's clear. So let's go further. So we talked about DNS record, and now let me show you. Okay, so far we have done with our record type. We have seen what A record, NS record, MX record, CNAME, PTR record represent. So let's go further on further some more concepts on DNS. So we talked about DNS cache also, like what does DNS cache and records represent. I want to cover one more topic here. Like when you see SOA record, which I showed you using db.domain.com. Okay, this file in etc bind was having SOA record, starting record. So it has serial number, refresh number, retry, expire, and minimum number. So TTL is always specified in start of authority record, which is called SOA record in DNS terms. So serial record will increment whenever zone file is modified. So that others, right, we have primary server, we have secondary server, like master or slave. You can say that master or slave. So whenever someone modified any records or someone modified zone file, others know that when zone has been changed and should be reloaded. So that is why serial number is specified. Refresh is the number of seconds between update request between your master and slave. Retry is number of seconds between retries if a request DNS query get failed. Expire means number of seconds before considering the data stale. So if some record has been removed or some entry resource record has been strained, so expire time says the number of seconds before considering the data stale. So this is how DNS cache. So we have talked about caching, we have talked about authoritative and non-authoritative servers. So now let's see what is the difference between caching and authoritative. So whenever you dig or do NS lookup in subsequent requests, we notice that there is a decrease in query time if we repeat the query. So why it goes through is because answers are being cached by the querying name server. We have talked again on this part previously to speed up request and to save network resource. So TTL is the value which controls the time answers can be cached. So DNS server can put in two categories. One is caching and one is authoritative. So authoritative servers we have already talked are typically only answer queries for data over which they have authority. Like I am admin of IT department. So I have control only on IT department. So it means that data authoritative server typically only answers queries for the data over which they have authority. So data that is which they have an external copy either from zone file or database. If they do not know the answer, they will point to source of authority but will not process the query recursively. I hope it is clear authoritative that I am authority for this department. I can answer any queries related to IT department. But if someone comes from CSC department, I will give the reference of admin of CSC department, but I do not have details on that. That is as clear as it is. While caching name servers act as a query forwarders on behalf of clients, and it will cache answer for the latest. So the TTL for the answer is used to determine how long it may be cached without requerying. That's it. So let's talk more on TTL value. So what is TTL value? Time to live. So TTL value decrements over time and expire. So if you try repeatedly asking for the A record for www.skill.com, what do you observe about the query time and TTL? So let's go through this. So let's query the SOA for a domain. So we will do dig, SOA and domain. So if you see we have serial number, refresh, retry and expire and negative TTL. So let's see that. So the first two fields highlighted are the start of authority, which means the admin sets the name of the source server for the domain data. So this is not always the case. So it represents the responsible person, which is the email ID to contact in case of problem. So I hope this is clear now why we required start of authority. So whenever you face any issues related to query or expiry date, you have an email ID to contact in case of any problems. So I think this we have already talked about serial number. This is used for replication between two name servers. How often a replica server should check the master to see if there is new data. So how often it retry if master server fails to answer after refresh. And expiry date when the master server has failed to answer for too long. So basically, we have talked about caching name server and everything. Now let's go through one more important topic for DNS, which is called delegation. This is also very important. So we mentioned previously that one of the advantage of DNS was we distribute admin duty to other one. We have a shared administrator. So we have shared admin concept in our DNS. So we delegate when there is a admin boundary and we want to turn over control of a subdomain to department of larger organization or any other organization in a country or any entity representing a country domain. So we delegate different duties to different administrative boundary. So that is called delegation. That is a shared admin. So that we want to turn control over our subdomain to either a department of larger organization, either an organization in a country, or either an entity representing a country domain. So that is called delegation. So let's come across delegation. So this is our root domain. This is our top level domain, which is DKORG, other things. So can you see that these lines? This is called delegation. Like I have delegated DK duties to get Python. I've delegated organization down duty to this one. That is called different domains and zones. So I have segregated duties to different domains and zones. So when we talk about, I will go further on that what is difference between domain and what is difference between zones. Domains versus zone. When we talk about the entire subtree, we talk about domains. When we talk about part of a domain that is admin by an entity, we talk about zone. So that is important. Domain versus zone. So when we talk about entire subtree, we talked, it's called domain. When we talk about part of domain, so what is zone? Zone is a part of domain, that is called zone. So it will be administered by any entity. So let's go further. So we have an organization, EU. So we have one zone which is called, we have a domain which is organization. We can say that abc.org. That is called our organization or our domain. And it is subcategorized between EU zone. So then we further have eu.org can also be a domain. So we have eu.org domain under which we can have www.eu.org, gr.eu.org, fr.eu.org. So we have categorization domain, then zone can be also a domain, then it can be segregated to another parts. So that when we talk about a part of domain that is admitted by entity, we talk about zones. So let's say that when you encounter any problems with your network, web service or email, you don't always suspect DNS. When you do, it's not always obvious what the problem is because DNS is tricky. So great tool for quickly spotting configuration problem is docfile. So I will not go further on this because for GTM topic, you should just know what is DNS, what is resource record type, what is zone, and what is domain. No more details you need to follow up. Just need to get basics like how DNS works. So this is how DNS works. So let's summarize like what we have done so far today, and further on we will go further on this topic. So today we discuss in previous two classes, like let's say that, let me summarize. So we know that what is DNS, how DNS work, okay, what is root, what is top level domain, what is sub level domain, subdomain, how to purchase domain. So I'm just summarizing so that you all come to know like what topics we have studied so far. We have talked about zone, zone file, then we talk about domain, recursive versus iterative query, then we talk about authoritative versus non-authoritative. So these all concepts are very important to understand before going to jump to the DNS, which is called intelligent DNS. Okay, then we come across resource record type, A record, triple A record, NS, MX, PTR. Okay, then we came across important concept known as TTL, caching. Okay, then we talked about little bit on topic called bind configuration. We will come more on bind. I will go more into detail into bind when we jump into configure DNS in legacy versus GTM. So bind is a tool where you can configure DNS as a bind server, where you can configure name.config. So I will show you more on that. So this is all topic we have summarized so far. So any doubts you have in these topics, you can always contact me via YouTube channel Skilled Inspirational Academy. So I hope you have details like what we have covered so far, different records, domain. This is enough for DNS level. We have also talked one more important topic was delegation. Like what is delegation? That is important. So what does delegation means? And what is email zone or domain resolution? Bind we will cover because that is the utility for DNS. We will cover further. We have also created zone files, like we have seen zone files, created resource record. Now let's come forward further on our topic. Thank you everyone. We will continue in another video. Thank you.